All right, what is going on, everybody? You guys know who it is. Patriots Global here with another one, of course, with my boy Patriots Football Breakdown. I mean, this seems like it's becoming like a collaboration channel.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
A little bit behind on the channel as of late. I think it's been pretty busy for both of us. I think we talked off the
Yeah.
air. So getting back to this, nonetheless, guys, this is going to be an official thing that we are going to be doing. I'm going to be having Patriots Football Breakdown on about once or twice a week. We're going to be doing the game recaps. I wish we did this at the start of the season. Unfortunately, we just thought about this idea, and I think it's going to be super beneficial. But to hop on here every Monday at around 5-6 p.m. We're going to be looking at about 5 p.m. every Monday to do these game recaps of the games. Essentially, now obviously that's gonna have to be a little modified depending on a Thursday game or a Monday game. But for the most part, you're playing Sunday games. So this is when we're going to be doing those game recaps. So for everybody that likes these game recaps, you guys can tune in every Monday for Sunday games at least. Anything different will, of course, let you guys know via social media and community tab and whatnot. But every Monday, 5 p.m., me and Paige Football Breakdown coming to recap these games. But you know how we start these videos. Let's roll that intro. All right, let's hop right into this video. I mean, what a statement game by the New England Patriots. I mean, look, okay, let's get it out of the way now. Let's get it out of the way now because the comments are going to be flooding with this. It's the Jets. We know that this is the Jets. But although the Jets are still the Jets, they did improve. They did improve versus what we saw a few weeks ago when we originally faced them. They are a team that I think gradually has gotten better. And nonetheless, the Patriots played well against them a couple of weeks ago, but to blow a team out like this, for you to put up 54 points and hold the opposing team to just 13.
No mercy.
I don't care what team you are. I don't care what team you play, what team you are. You put up that many points, you're doing something right. Especially because, like I said, the Jets have put their pieces together much better than what we've seen since the last time we faced them. So a 54-13 win here by the New England Patriots. I mean, just to give a little bit of insight here on this, the Patriots had their most points with, again, 54 and most yards total with 551 in a game that was not started by Tom Brady since week 2 of the 1979 season.
Wow.
That is absolutely ridiculous. And you know what? I think we all came in here saying, you know what? Like, the Patriots should win this game. It should be a decent margin of a win, but nobody, I think, should have predicted. I mean, 30 points, I would say, like, maximum. 30, 35 points maximum. But to put up 54, I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Yeah, I think maybe going into the game, I was kind of in the range of like maybe 34-16, something to that effect. But like you said, man, and for all the people that are saying, "Oh, well, it's the Jets." Well, yeah, it is the Jets, but it's also another professional team. You got to remember, anytime you can beat any one professional team can beat another by like more than 40 points. That's saying something. I mean, those guys get paid too. Are they at the level of some of the upper echelon teams in the league? No. I mean, I would argue that the Patriots aren't at the level of some of the upper echelon teams right now. I think we're trying to get to that point. I think we're definitely further ahead of where the Jets are. I think yesterday's final score proved that. But I mean, don't take that for granted. Oh, it's the Jets. Don't kind of poo-poo it because it's a lesser opponent. The Patriots did what you're supposed to do, what good teams are supposed to do. When a team that's like less talented than you or lesser than you comes into your home stadium, you're supposed to beat them. You're supposed to beat them convincingly. Now, Bill was like, laser eyes, no mercy, no prisoners. He was throwing play action and fades down the sideline with 6 minutes to go, up 30 points, which I loved, by the way. That was hilarious. I don't know if you heard the comment by Richard Seymour. He said, he was inducted to the Patriots Hall of Fame over the weekend. He said, I wanted it to be this weekend because I wanted it to be our homecoming weekend. I thought that was so great. I love that.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. And I mean, another interesting little fact here is that the Patriots are 133-8 when they are scoring 30 plus points in the Belichick era. So clearly, if the Patriots are putting up 30 or more points, it is highly likely that they are going to be coming out with a win. And again, I think this just proved it. And I think this game, and you texted me after, we needed this. We needed this game. We needed this confidence. And I know a lot of people, again, I said this before, they're going to say it's the Jets, but I think there's a lot of pieces that New England needed to put together to head forward. And a lot of that too, I think, was confidence, knowing, okay, this is successful. This is not successful. This worked right. This did not work right. This is something that we can do going forward. And nonetheless, chemistry and confidence. I think that's two things that this team has been lacking. And they really, really, I think, put that together going forward. I mean, how many times have we seen in the past any NFL team not necessarily have the talent around them, but they play at such a good level because they have good chemistry and they have confidence? When you play with those two attributes, you really do turn around an entire season, despite the coaching necessarily, and more importantly, despite the talent you necessarily have on that roster. So I'm really hoping that this is a game that we go forward that really pushes this team.
Build on it.
And like you said, yeah, build on it. And I think you look at the other games we played this season, Dallas, Tampa Bay. I would say the only true loss that we've had, or, the Dolphins, I would say the only true loss we had is against the Saints. Yeah. Other than that, we are a hair, one singular play away from winning those games. We just needed that one literal, just tiny shove, just tiny little tap.
Yeah.
And I think that this game could be that tiny little tap.
Younger teams, it takes a while to kind of learn how to win those close games because, I mean, you were talking about talent. And talent, that obviously matters in the NFL, but I think it's in the NFL versus college football. I think it's more, you hear a lot sometimes, games are lost more than they're won sometimes. It's about the team that makes less mistakes and intangible things like I said, chemistry, playing together, rhythm, coaching staff, all things like that. All the that matters a lot. It matters just as much as all the talent in the world. You can have all the talent in the world, but if they can't play together as a team, you're not going to win many games. But, I thought the young guys really stepped up yesterday. A lot of young guys, J.J. Taylor, a couple touchdowns. Hunter Henry's not really a younger guy, but, just some of the newer acquisitions and some of the younger guys I just thought really stepped up and really played well, continuing to ascend.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good game. It's a good game when Belichick's on the sideline, high-fiving and talking to every single player on the sideline, when you have Brian Hoyer coming in to finish the game, when you take out Damian Harris and all the other running backs and you throw J.J. Taylor out there, it's a good game. It's something to build on. And I'm actually so excited to see the post-game videos when you win a game. I'm so excited to see how hype all these guys are going to be in the locker room, how Belichick responds once that comes out. And I mean, again, heading into the next few weeks, I can actually pull this up for a visual effect so everyone can kind of have an understanding on where we go from this point. But you look at where we are now. We just finished week 7. We are now heading into week 8. Week 8 is not a joke. Okay. The Chargers are a legit team.
Yeah.
I know that I think it was last week, not this past week, where it was a little bit of a down game for them. But nonetheless, the Chargers have performed at a very high level. Justin Herbert looking amazing all around. I think that they're a tougher team to play than what we saw last year when we played them and totally threw them out of the house.
Right.
So that's not going to be an easy game. Carolina, they started off hot, but they've kind of dialed it down, especially Sam Darnold getting benched. We'll have to see if Christian McCaffrey's back in that game. If it is, I think that's a momentum boost for them, but not necessarily the end all be all. So I do think that's a winnable game. But I mean, look, then you have Cleveland, you have Tennessee, Buffalo. Like you have some tough opponents coming up here through the stretch. And I definitely think this confidence booster that we got here week 7 against the Jets is a highly needed one here by the team.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the schedule, I think it kind of shapes up favorably. If we can get past the Chargers, who are going to be a tough team, like you mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about them as we go forward. That's the next opponent. But, the Panthers after that, they've been, totally up and down. Sam Darnold is probably, I don't know if he's going to get benched next week. He got benched yesterday, but he's starting to remember that he's Sam Darnold. Christian McCaffrey might be available to play. I think he was on the short-term IR with, I think it was, calf or foot injury, something like that.
Yeah.
Chances are he'll be back, but, how much in rhythm is he going to be after missing most of the early part of the season? Cleveland probably going to be without Baker Mayfield in that game. I think that shoulder injury is supposed to keep him out like maybe up to a month or so. So you'll have Case Keenum coming in. That should be a lot easier to, deal with than a fully loaded, Browns offense with Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in the backfield. They've been nicked up too. You're still going to have to deal with Myles Garrett off the edge on Cleveland's defense, but we should at least be able to keep Cleveland's offense in check if that's the case, if Baker Mayfield doesn't play in that game. And then the Titans, they're very much a Jekyll and Hyde team. When they're good, but when they're bad, they're bad. I mean, we saw earlier in the year they beat the Jets, or they lost to the Jets, excuse me. Then they turn around and beat the Bills and the Chiefs in consecutive weeks. So you just don't know what you're going to get from them on a week-to-week basis. Maybe you catch them on a bad week. If we can make some hay here in the next month or so, the schedule gets tougher after that. Then I think it's like Buffalo, the Colts, Buffalo again. There's a couple of tough games in there kind of towards the end. But if we can get on a little roll here, get some momentum going, I think we could be in good shape heading into those games later in the season.
Yeah. And to give a little bit of perspective on here, the Patriots won in pretty much every single category. I think this was an overall just great team win. I think that we've seen not a lot of complimentary football from this team so far this season. You see the offense performing well and the defense isn't performing great. The defense is performing great and the offense isn't. And that's not necessarily game to game. A lot of times it's even drive to drive, which I think is another reason why this team isn't necessarily winning games, especially towards the end of the stride there in these games, especially because it's, these last little pushes like we talked about, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Bucks, that one last push because it's not complimentary football. But I think in this game, all around, they played pretty spectacular complimentary football. I mean, you look at total yards here. The Patriots blew out the Jets in total yards. New England put up 551 total yards, while the Jets put up just 299 passing yards here. New England put up 403. New England puts up 403 total yards, while the Jets put up 237 rushing yards here, which I think, Belichick talked about this himself. He said from the start of this game, their priority was to stop the run. They were not going to let them get run over like they did the past couple weeks ago when they played the Jets. New England allowed just 62 points, or not 62 points, rather 62 yards rushing to the Jets, while New England put up 148 yards total on the ground. New England was averaging 7.4 yards per play, while the Jets were averaging 4.9. As we all know, New England scored 54 points to the Jets 13. New England had 0 fumbles this game, which I thought was finally spectacular because it seems like every game there was averaging at least 1 fumble, but they did force the Jets to fumble in this game. The Jets threw 2 interceptions while Mac Jones threw none. The Jets had 2 sacks allowed while New England had just 1 sack allowed. I think, this offensive line performed well, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Third down efficiency. New England they were pretty close in this category. New England on third down efficiency, 58%, while they allowed the Jets to convert just 53%. Well, I shouldn't say just 53%. It's not a great number. But 53% the Jets converted. In time of possession, New England had 32 minutes, while the Jets had 27 minutes. And then penalties, New England did lose in this category, 6 penalties to the Jets 5. So.
Yeah, really clean game, and that was the most gratifying thing to see it all. No turnovers, not a lot of stupid penalties. The offensive line played really well. I think they've gotten better each of the last few weeks or so. They're starting to really trend in the right direction. Isaiah Wynn still kind of scares me a little bit at left tackle. He has his moments, but I thought overall, by and large, they played great as a unit yesterday. And you're talking about the running game. Yeah, the running game was huge. I know week 2 when we played the Jets, we gave up like 128 or something like that on the ground. Gave up about half of that yesterday, shutting down the run. It's a hallmark, Bill Belichick, that keeps him up at night when a defense of his can't stop the run. Yeah, it was really huge. And like you said, complimentary football before, no turnovers, no bad penalties, no killing yourself. I thought that, even though the Jets had to deal with a backup quarterback coming in, you talk about the third down conversion percentages. I think that was probably a little bit of them playing the time and the score more so than the Jets offense, probably towards the second quarter and onward in that game. I think, it was like 31. It was 31-7 at halftime, I believe. So it was, they were pretty much just giving you those underneath things, check it down, pick up 5 or 6 yards, run up and tackle them, keep the clock moving. They did definitely move the ball, and the Jets, did a good job of executing on those type of things. But I think we kind of scaled back our defensive game plan, or at least our strategy, once the score got to be where it was. But I thought overall it was just a great performance, by far the best 60 minutes of football that we played so far this year. And Kendrick Bourne probably would have been the best quarterback on the Jets roster yesterday.
Oh, no, yeah, 100%. I completely agree with you. I mean, he was even better than Patrick Mahomes yesterday. So, I mean, that says something. I mean, QB1.
He's washed up. He's done.
Yeah, QB1 somewhere in the league. But
Mahomes overrated.
What are your thoughts? Because I heard some fans were a little pissed off that the Patriots threw out these trick plays way too soon. Now, some say, this is the Jets. This is the Jets. And the first or second drive, you're throwing out these trick plays already. Why are you doing it against the Jets? Now, personally, I don't think it's dumb at all. In fact, I look at this as a perspective of you're gaining confidence. You know what's going to work. And a lot of people are not understanding where it's like, okay, you use Kendrick Bourne as a quarterback in this. Now teams have to compensate for Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers. That's not an easy thing to do, whether it's on tape or not. There's a lot of things that I think Josh McDaniels has not shown yet, but to have to cover both of those guys and know which guy is going to get the ball on a trick play when you don't know when it's going to come, that's not an easy thing either way, whether you've shown it, whether it's on tape or not. But I want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I don't have a problem with them pulling out the trick plays at that point in the game. I don't think they really needed it to score on the Jets on that particular drive. But I mean, I don't blame him for having great offensive creativity. Like, he was getting ripped, and I took part of that too. I think the play calling was a little bit conservative early in the season, the decision making a little bit conservative, but I think a lot of that was because of the poor pass protection. You're bringing along a rookie and a lot of new free agents. You're trying to get up to speed in the offense. But no, I don't have any problem with the trick plays. I think they might have used maybe one too many. I think just before halftime, they did some, toss to Damian Harris, or I'd have to go back and look at it, but it was some kind of trick play before halftime. He threw it back to Mac, and I think Mac wanted to go downfield. I think maybe we used them a little bit too often yesterday when the score was already a little bit out of hand. But, there's kind of two sides to the argument of using it too much, because now that it's something that they're going to trot out there. And like you said, there's a multitude of different things. Kendrick Bourne can throw it at any time. Jacoby Myers has been used on multiple, end around, double pass type of plays like that. That kind of plants the seed of doubt in the defense's mind that, that's maybe they don't rush to their assignment as fast, or maybe they aren't reacting as fast. If you're out there thinking instead of reacting, that can be the difference between, an incomplete pass or giving up a big play, a 30-yard touchdown, or whatever the case may be. So the more the defense has to respect things like that, I think the more dangerous it makes the Patriots offense and the play calling, because they can show those looks and not necessarily even go with the trick play. There's a lot of different things that you can do to keep the defense on their heels. And I think Josh McDaniels has done a great job the last few weeks with creativity. I think he's not really getting the amount of credit that he should in terms of play calling and getting this offense to where it has been.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those situations where, things are great, you don't recognize it. You recognize only when things are bad. I do agree. I think Josh McDaniels has definitely picked things up the last couple of weeks. And, I think this just kind of shows the arrogance, not just Patriots fans in general, but like fans in general, where it's like, oh, Josh McDaniels, you're being too conservative. And then he gives you these spectacular plays and you're like, okay, well, why are you using them right now? Like, it's just like, it's never going to be a perfect scenario.
Mac throws 5 picks because we're throwing it too much. Oh, you got to scale it back. Got to give him a running game.
Exactly.
It's
exactly.
revisionist. Totally revisionist.
It's a situation where I much rather see the trick plays early on. I much rather see creativity from Josh McDaniels and progression from this offense and the play calling, rather than him being too conservative. And I think that's the exact opposite. Like, we didn't see this team be conservative. We're seeing them step away from being conservative. We're not seeing Mac Jones hold on to the ball and take all these checkdowns. Like, we are seeing him constantly try to look down the field and throw passes down the field. And I think the reason you saw splash plays down the field, whether that was on trick plays, whether that is the N'Keal Harry play down the field late in the game with Brian Hoyer, whether that was Kendrick Bourne down the sideline on a big play for Mac Jones, all these splash plays, I think, really came from the movement and the progression that the offensive line showed us in this game. And for those who don't know, from left to right, we had you had Isaiah Wynn, you had Ted Karras, David Andrews, Shaq Mason, and then Mike Onwenu at right tackle there. Now, there was a point where Shaq Mason did go out. Injuries were another, I would say, it's been a big takeaway all season, but I think a big takeaway from this game specifically. When he went out of the game, I believe, who was it? Was it James Ferentz, I think, that came in?
Yeah, Ferentz.
Yeah, it was James Ferentz that came in and plugged in there at right guard. But I mean, I think nonetheless, continuity, you want to see with this offensive line, like, it's not even game to game that I think we were seeing the Patriots offensive line switch. There were times that we were seeing drive to drive, like everything was getting miscombobulated, and continuity is something that Dante Scarnecchia himself really pinned down when he was here, and he spoke to the media just saying, you know what, it's better to have continuity and have the same guys there and kind of get through their struggles and stick with your same players rather than be miscombobulated and try to put this guy there and that guy there, and you're confusing everything and everybody. And I think that's a big reason why this offense was also struggling. And, you know, at some point you hope to get Trent Brown back. What does Trent Brown at this point give to the team? When does he come back? Does he come back? I'm not 100% sure. We haven't really seen anything from him because since he came to New England, we haven't really seen much of anything. So there's not too much we can say on that. But I would say the offensive line we saw in this game, that's what you got to stick with. I think that's the continuity you stick with. You go with Isaiah Wynn there at left tackle. You go with Ted Karras, who is a very good veteran guard and center.
Yeah.
Keep him there at left guard. I think Onwenu has proven he can play at tackle if he needs to. I know left guard to right tackle is just, it's a tremendous switch, but, you know, let's get him comfortable there again. He shows that he's able to do it. He's probably the best there to be able to do it with Trent Brown currently out of the mix. Keep David Andrews there at center. And hopefully Shaq Mason can get past this abdominal injury and can get back into the mix because I think he's an important piece here. But I think that should be your starting lineup going forward. Once Trent Brown comes back, you can reevaluate going from there. But who knows what the heck's going to happen with him.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I like the five that they trotted out there yesterday. I think that is the best available combination right now with the Shaq Mason stuff. I hope it's mostly because of the injury. I mean, because of the score of the game at the time they took him out. Hopefully he didn't re-aggravate it so much as it was. You know, maybe he just wasn't 100% coming into the day. Maybe they saw a chance to maybe get him a little bit of rest when they didn't necessarily need him in the game. I'm hoping that's what it was. But yeah, because I really don't want to rely on James Ferentz too much. I wouldn't be too confident in him. As far as Trent Brown, I think the 3 weeks have been up the minimum with him being on injured reserve. If it's not now, it's next week. So we should be seeing something. I mean, it's been since the second quarter of week 1. You know, I mean, I'm not some kind of doctor or anything, but you research a calf injury. A minor calf strain is like a week-to-week thing. A major calf strain, which is essentially a calf tear, that could be up to like, 6 weeks. So, I mean, even on the long end of that, you would think if that's truly what it was, he should be getting ready to get back by now, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm a little worried about Trent Brown there. But I do like, Ted Karras, serviceable veteran, like you said, at left guard. You can rely on him. David Andrews really picked his play up as of late. Isaiah Wynn, he still kind of has those little mental lapses at times, but I think he's definitely our best option at left tackle. Much better than Yadni Kajust or Justin Herron. And I like keeping Michael Winu out at right tackle. I think he's the best fit. I think they got tired of playing musical chairs out there on the right side. And after that hit Mac took from Randy Gregory last week, that was a total decleater. That was like getting hit by a freight train. I think they saw enough of Yadni Kajust after that. So I definitely want to see Owinu out there at right tackle going forward. And I thought they had a great day. I thought, health's starting to gel as a unit. Maybe, getting them kind of running downhill, firing off the ball, running the ball early in the game to get them kind of, pumped up and into it a little bit more effectively. I think maybe that had something to do with it. You mentioned the yards per carry average. I mean, Damian Harris, I've kind of been hoping that they would share some of the load a little more evenly with him and Ramondre Stevenson, because I just see these little nick kind of injuries kind of starting to pile up with Damian a little bit. But the fact that he was able to get 107 yards on just 14 carries yesterday, that's outstanding. I mean, you got basically the same level of production on much less of a workload. That's fantastic. That's exactly what you wanted to see with that.
He was averaging 7.6 yards per carry, to put that into perspective.
Yeah, great downhill running.
Yeah, he did great. We did get a donation here. Pull this up from my boy Tommy. He said, "Hello from Germany. Keep up the good work, my boy. I really appreciate that." Another longtime supporter of the channel. Always see you in the comments. You said, "Which cornerback do I like New England to pick up before the trade deadline?" I'd have to do some research. Honestly, there's not a lot of guys, me personally, that I think trade deadline wise New England off the top of my head could go after, especially because you look at their cap situation. I know a lot of people are claiming for like a big name guy. They don't have the money to pick up a big name guy. I know a lot of people kind of touched upon maybe like an Aqib Talib trade like they made a couple of years ago. Maybe a guy like on a rookie deal the last couple years, something like that. But I really just see a depth piece at this point if they do go trade deadline. I don't see like a big top-notch high name because New England just doesn't have the cap space right now to be able to do so. And yeah, we had a bunch in the offseason, but New England literally had to trade Stephon Gilmore. They had to get rid of Stephon Gilmore in order to just sign Jamie Collins, which he's not making much money at all. So I think that kind of puts things into perspective. I think if you're going to see a trade, it's not going to be for a guy with a super high cap number.
It's going to be depth more than anything.
And if it is a guy with like high cap number, like they're going to have to take a pay cut. It's going to have to happen. We don't have any money.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, we just had to get rid of Stephon Gilmore. Mainly, it was financially driven. Either the Patriots weren't willing to pay him what he wanted, or we just simply weren't able to pay him what he wanted. And, like you said, they're hard up against the cap right now, so they weren't able to get anything done on that front. They had about 18 months to get something done and just couldn't. And, it's really bad timing with the Jonathan Jones injury now. Thankfully, we got Joejuan Williams back. I thought he played reasonably well yesterday. Hopefully Sean Wade's getting over that concussion. He might need to be called upon. I thought Miles Bryant has showed pretty well in the last few weeks. I thought he's played at a reasonably high level. And then, JC Jackson's really stepped his game up throughout the course from last year. I think we talked about this last time. I wasn't really sure if he was going to end up being in that shutdown corner kind of category. I always kind of saw him as more of a ball hawk than just an overall great technician at the corner position. But he's
like a Logan Ryan. Like a Logan Ryan,
yeah. And and like you said, around the trade deadline, I wouldn't look for any kind of splash moves. A, the cap space, like you mentioned. B, if a team is trying to trade a talented player, that's probably going to come with a high cap number. We don't have enough money to make a position like that. And if it's a team that is in position to make a playoff run, they're not going to want to give up a premium caliber player like that. And, the year we did the Aqib Talib trade, we were arguably just that one piece away from being top-notch in the AFC. We still, I know we're excited about the win yesterday, and we should be, and the team looks like, a lot better progressing over the last few weeks. I still don't know if we're in the absolute upper echelon at 3-4. We got to continue to kind of prove that over the next few weeks as far as roster composition is concerned. I was looking at maybe a guy like Xavier Rhodes from Indy. He's a veteran guy, cheap contract, but he's on a 1-year deal expiring at the end of the year, so he would basically be a rental. What would you have to give up to get him, and would he want to stay for a team that's pretty young right now and trying to build toward maybe winning next year, or just trying to find a way to learn how to win games right now? I don't know if that Aqib Talib fit is really out there for the Patriots to make this year, if that move is really out there to make. I don't know if I'd want to give up a top asset like a second or a third round pick right now. I think we need that kind of draft capital because we are hard up against the cap. We need to flip some of that cap space and use those draft picks to get the money right. So I wouldn't expect any big splashes going into the deadline. Not this year.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen Rhodes being kind of talked about in trade rumors just in general, not necessarily the Patriots. And I mean, you even look at the Colts. The Colts have picked it up over the last couple of weeks, and arguably their weakest point is their secondary. So would they really, want to trade Rhodes at that point too? I mean, maybe if they were a team that was still struggling, but I think they're starting to pick things up. So maybe they don't even want to do that. I would say positions to watch here if the Patriots do decide to make some type of move, which if I do, I don't think it's going to be a top-notch move. I would look at a cornerback, I would look at running back, and I would look at wide receiver. Those would really be the only ones. But I mean, we're talking about trading for a guy. I wouldn't be surprised if New England trades a guy. I mean, maybe they look at trading, a N'Keal Harry or somebody at this point.
Yeah, I was thinking like on Thursday or Friday, obviously before the result of this up here, there's a good chance we're just going to be total sellers at the trade deadline. Sell off the veterans, the McCourtys, Hightowers, all the guys that we could flip, get to a contending team right now that could use them for some kind of draft capital. That would be the thing to do if we can't really get any good positive momentum going. Yesterday kind of makes me a little more positive about the potential outlook of the season at 3-4. There's still a lot of ball left to be played, and maybe we get a little hot. Maybe some other teams kind of fall off. We might be able to make a move there. So I think the way we're playing heading into the trade deadline is going to play a big factor in whether or not we're buyers or sellers. Even if we are buyers, I don't, like I said, we just said, cap situation's kind of tight. I don't know if those moves to put you over the top are necessarily out there to be made right now. So I think the way we're playing going into the November 2nd deadline is going to determine if we're buyers or sellers at that point.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, whether you're talking about AFC or NFC, I mean, this I feel like it's wide open this year. I mean, this has been pretty surprising. You look at the Buffalo Bills; they're 4-2. We are 3-4. The Dolphins are 1-6, and the Jets are 1-5. The Raiders 5-2, Chargers 4-2. The Chiefs are 3-4. The Broncos 3-4. Bengals 5-2. Ravens 5-2. Browns 4-3. Steelers 3-3. Like, it's wide open still, guys.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of football to be played. It's not like, there's several teams just undefeated in the AFC or whatnot. I mean, this is wide open. This is really going to come down to the wire for a lot of teams. And let's remember, because of new league rules, like, more teams are making the playoffs than usual. So New England is still 100% into making this. Are they going to, make the first round bye for the playoffs? No, but at this point, that's not really what you're hoping for. But we did get a donation here from King Cato 21, another longtime supporter. You said, would you agree that the Patriots need to win 4 of the next 5 to stay in the hunt for the 3rd wild card spot at the moment? You want to touch on that first?
Yeah, I mean, that, well, to definitely be in consideration for the wild card, yeah, you definitely got to win like 4 out of 5 or go on a little bit of a run like that. I'd have to look at some of the the other teams and the tiebreaker scenarios and things like that to give a definitive answer on that. But yeah, if they're going to make any sort of move toward any wild card spots, they are going to have to win, at least 4 out of the next 5, or maybe 5 out of 7, something like that. They are going to have to put some wins together to get back into that kind of playoff race. Yeah, you see there, after the Chargers at Carolina, that's a game that Patriots might be favored in, even though they're on the road. Cleveland, pretty banged up. Like we said, no Baker Mayfield potentially. Atlanta, they're, outside of Matt Ryan and Calvin Ridley, they don't really have a whole lot this year. Tennessee's kind of up and down. Then you got Buffalo, Colts, Buffalo again. That's going to be a bit of a tough stretch. Then you finish with Jacksonville and Miami. So, I mean, if you can just get past this next month or so and then maybe just, get 2 out of 3 in that week 13 to week 16 range, I think you'd definitely be in good shape as far as the wild card's concerned.
Yeah, I think as long as this team doesn't beat themselves anymore, I think that they should win one of those Buffalo games for sure. So I think they could definitely split with them. Like you said, Cleveland's pretty banged up right now, so you got to think that, as long as they are staying banged up, that there's a good chance they win that game. Atlanta, I think, should definitely be a win. Tennessee, they're picking things up. So Belichick disciples, former Belichick disciples are always super hard to beat. So that could definitely be an L there. The Colts have picked things up. We'll have to see how they continue to develop over the next couple of weeks, especially because Carson Wentz is more than injury prone. We'll have to see if he can last till week 15. But Jacksonville, Miami, you got to definitely believe that those are 2 games that New England should definitely win to close out the season. The Chargers is going to be a tough game. You got to think Carolina with benching Sam Darnold and how he's played from, the beginning of the season to now, that New England could really kind of step upon that, take advantage of it, and win the game. So, I mean, if you want to look at the next 4 to 5, that would be the Chargers, Carolina, Cleveland, Atlanta, and Tennessee. The only ones that I think are true testaments could, depending on what happens with Cleveland, definitely Tennessee and potentially the Chargers. So, but I definitely think that these are winnable games for the team for sure.
Yeah, and just thinking about, if we're in the playoff mix and the wild card mix toward the end of the year, how bad does that week 1 loss to Miami hurt right now? They're 1-6. We're the only team that they beat. We lost to them by a point. We had that one pretty much in our hip pocket. Man, if we lose out, on a wild card spot by not much, that's going to be the one that kind of comes back to bite us. That's right now really looking like a game we definitely should have won.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that, the Dolphins had a good season last year. I was expecting a lot from them this year, and they did a lot of good things. And now we're hearing that Brian Flores could be fired. That's
wow.
Nothing surprised me in the NFL anymore. I mean, I would not mind seeing Brian Flores back here in New England, though. But
yeah, that would be great. I think Steve Belichick, he's been a little up and down. I'm not too big of a fan of his play. They'll kind of share the defensive coordinator duties. It's the defense played great against the Jets, obviously, but if that bad trend were to have continued, I'm really wondering the kind of position that Bill would have been in. Would he have had to make a move potentially with his own son? Obviously he wants to get his son involved in the coaching game, but if the results aren't there, is he going to do what's best for the team, or is he going to do what's best for his son's interests? That's a pretty big dilemma right there. But thankfully, I don't think it's going to come down to that. But yeah, B-Flow, that was a great defensive coordinator in 19. We had that great defense led by him. I really liked how aggressive he was. I think he dialed up more pressures than really any Patriots coordinator I can think of in recent memory. Definitely more than Matt Patricia. I know Dean Pease back in the day, he liked to blitz a little bit. But I just like the way Brian Flores calls the defensive game. I just thought he had us really ready in that 2019 postseason, loaded for bear. And, he does a great job there. It'd be a shame to see him get fired after just like, it would only be this is his third year, right? His third year in Miami, I think, is the head coach.
Yeah, this is his because he left and he started Miami in 2019.
Right. Yeah. 2018 postseason. That's what I meant to say. But yeah, I mean, that would be interesting if they fire him. Like, I mean, guys got a quick hook these days, man. I mean, if you don't produce real fast, I mean, they don't have a lot of patience. I mean, it used to be back in the day, like with quarterbacks, you take them in the first round. Normally, you give them like 3 years on the bench just to learn. Now they're throwing these guys in week one. I mean, if you don't get it done if you don't look like a Hall of Famer after 8 games, they're thinking about the next guy. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, no, 100%. Another donation here from a longtime supporter of the channel, Red Sox. Red Sox says, I see the Pats being both buyers and sellers, trading away the not so productive players and getting some other players. I could definitely see it going both ways. I'm trying to think next week. So yeah, we're really at the trade deadline at this point. I mean, we're like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks away from the trade deadline at this point.
Week from tomorrow, I think, November 2nd.
Yeah, and it's hard to say because look, if we were at a point where we were playing very good football, progressive football, and you're winning those close games, maybe we really are buyers instead of sellers at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
I think if this Jets game went another direction and it didn't go the way it did, I think we're confidently here saying we're sellers at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. God forbid, if you lose that game, you're absolutely sellers. And if you didn't come away with at least a win, but you look really bad doing it, that wouldn't have felt very good either. That wouldn't have let you have good feelings about the outlook of the season. But yeah, I think with this win, if we can build upon it, have a good performance against the Chargers this week, I think you definitely feel good about the wild card mix. Because like you said before, I mean, there's so many teams bunched up there. And I would trust that Bill is going to have us playing our best ball in the second half of the year. I totally expect that we're not going to be the same team we were the first few weeks. I think we're going to be hitting on all cylinders. And that's typically Bill's MO with this team. I mean, it's always kind of been that way. He's kind of used the first month of the season to toy around a little bit, tinker with some different things. Of course, back then you had, elite, play at the quarterback position. You're kind of bringing along Mac Jones right now, who's played well this year. Don't get me wrong, but he is still a rookie. I don't know if that tinkering around period was so much his intent, but I do think that we're going to be playing our best ball kind of in the second part of the season, maybe after Thanksgiving. So if we're in the wild card mix, I like our chances at that point. This next month's going to be tough though. If we can come out like 3-1 over the next 4, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier, like this AFC is so wide open still, completely wide open. So, like I said, we're at a weird point because he just destroyed the Jets. The AFC is wide open. So, does Belichick say, you know what? I'm going to take a chance. I'm kind of confident. Let's try to add a piece. And like I said, I think really the biggest weakness of this team at this point is at cornerback, especially with those injuries. So I would imagine that would potentially be where he fires mostly, but I think running back and wide receiver are definitely 120% honorable mentions, especially I would say more so running back at this point rather than a wide receiver. But it's going to be interesting. I've heard both rumors about the Patriots buying and selling. And I think it all just really depends on what Belichick himself feels about this team going forward. Does he feel that, you know what? I mean, let's add one or two pieces, and I think we're in a more comfortable place to play better football going forward, and we could definitely make a playoff run here. You know, if Belichick feels that way, especially because we already looked at the schedule here a couple of times in this stream, if he feels that way, then they're going to be buyers. But if he goes, you know what, this team is still not 100% figured out, I think we are a season away. Like, let's go into the off season. Let's make those adjustments. We already made a lot of moves this off season. 2022 is going to be the year. Then I think they'll be sellers. But either way, I do think there are pieces they could both buy and sell. I think at this point, see what you can get for N'Keal Harry. Try trading him. I think he showed he showed the ability of why we drafted him, and I feel like he shows that with Brian Hoyer. Like, Brian Hoyer and N'Keal Harry, I feel like kind of do have some type of connection. But at the end of the day, Brian Hoyer is not the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots, and Mac Jones and N'Keal Harry haven't really shown a repertoire. So at this point, I mean, see what you can get for N'Keal Harry, and if they like what they see, maybe they decide to make that trade, because I think other than that, you're not going to get much for N'Keal. You're not going to get much out of him either.
Yeah, and I've just never really – he's just never been a fit for the offense. What he does well is just not something that's really asked of or required by the Patriots receiving core to do too often. He's a big jump ball guy that can win on the outside. We use a lot of, short to intermediate option routes. You need great communication with the quarterback, short area quickness. N'Keal's not necessarily a very quick guy. I mean, I'm sure he's got, decent speed, but he's not like a Edelman or a Jacoby Myers, Troy Brown, in the slot there that can really shake people. He's a bigger bodied guy. And, they just don't really take those kind of shots too much during the game to warrant keeping him around. And if you can get like a 5th or a 6th round pick for him, I think he'd definitely do it. I think he only got maybe 2 or 3 targets yesterday, if that. I mean, I know he was in the game in the first half. I saw him in there one play. Then obviously the catch deep down the sideline late in the game. But they just don't. It's just not a fit for what we're trying to do right now. He'd probably be better served in a different kind of an offense, a more vertical type of offense, maybe like a Tennessee, something to that effect. But yeah, I could see that move being made, and just some depth kind of signings. Maybe another corner, but it's not. I don't expect it to be a star caliber player. Maybe like a Bryant Poole caliber player that like worked out.
I see free agency. They brought in a lot of guys via free agency. I liked Drake Hurts-Patrick. Unfortunately, he was already signed a couple of weeks ago, so he's not an option. But New England is really looking at free agency for a corner. Brian Poole's a guy they liked. Unfortunately, right after the workout, he signed with the Saints. He's released. I think he's a guy that plays a lot, kind of in the middle, kind of plays more so against the slot. Nickelback, I think he's a guy that they could definitely bring along. He's a good depth piece, and I think at this point he might be the best cornerback that you're essentially going to get on the open market. So I think they could definitely look there. You don't have to give up any assets, and you get a guy on an open market that you already worked out, a month or two ago.
Yeah. I mean, and I'd be hesitant too to kind of mess with the chemistry a little bit too much. I think you really need a definitive answer one way. That if you want to be total sellers, you'd want to be like 1-5, 1-6 at that point. You definitively know you're not really going anywhere this year. But I mean, I think, based on yesterday, I saw great energy, great chemistry. I think that's really starting to gel. I'd be hesitant to really bust that up too much. Just some little supplementary signing or supplementary trades here and there. Maybe, another, depth kind of acquisition at running back, a guy like Rex Burkhead, something in that realm that we talked about before. And then, a depth corner, maybe a 3rd or a 4th corner, guy like, a Bryant Poole, player of that caliber, just some little things to balance out the roster here and then, and kind of, fill in some of those injury holes right now. But I wouldn't necessarily expect anything really, really over the top or crazy at the trade deadline. No,
man, I know a lot of people want that, but it rarely happens. It rarely happens, especially with a team that just has so many question marks still. But
it's a really new team and really put together. It hasn't been together for a very long time. You can't really pass judgment on it too fast. I'd like to look at least a 17, a year's worth of games before we make any, critical roster decisions about the future. Let these guys kind of play together a little bit and see how they gel for a whole season.
Yeah, and we've seen teams do this several times where they go out and make huge moves in the offseason. It doesn't pan out year one, but year 2, year 3 of those guys in the system, it starts to maneuver a lot more. So you can't expect all these acquisitions and big changes because more than half of this roster is new players. Can't expect that to be figured out in just a few games to start the season. But we got another donation here from King Kato. He said, y'all mentioned McD leaving. taking Mayo to be the D coordinator wouldn't make sense. How worried would that make you about the defense, and who replaces Josh McDaniels at offensive coordinator?
Okay. If Josh were to leave, I mean, internally, maybe Troy Brown might be a consideration for offensive coordinator. I don't think Ivan Fears at his age would really want to go to be an offensive coordinator. Outside of that, probably looking at external options at that point. I can't really think of anybody else on the Patriots offensive staff right now that would be, the kind of credential and resume to be able to step into an offensive coordinator role. As far as the defensive side,
I think it's much easier defensively if that were to happen.
Yeah,
you have what, Steve Belichick, you have Mayo, you literally have Matt Patricia, who, if you really needed to, could swing into that position also. So I think defensively, you have bodies to be able to do so. But I do think offensively, you don't have that. But I do think there is something like in the mix that for some reason, Josh McDaniels has had all these opportunities, almost left to go to the Colts and didn't. I think there's something going on behind the scenes, maybe that we don't know about, maybe something that Belichick or Kraft is telling McDaniels that maybe we don't know about, but it's super interesting. All these opportunities, and he has continued to stay here in New England despite all of that. So I don't think McDaniels leaves, especially because, look, now you have a whole new rookie quarterback, all these new pieces. It's finally exciting for Josh McDaniels heading forward. I don't think he leaves. So I think it's I think the Patriots are definitely a good team heading forward with offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. They have a lot of bodies. I think the bigger question is, hey, like, what happens post Belichick? Who takes over as head coach after that? Is it Steve Belichick? Is it Josh McDaniels? I think that's the bigger question.
Yeah, I think when Josh essentially turned the plane around when he was on his way to Indianapolis, I think he basically, this is nothing officially reported or anything. This is just me in my own head. I think he got a handshake deal from Kraft saying, hey, you're going to be the next head coach after Bill leaves. Just stick around for a little while. Whether that comes to pass, I don't know. I think, like you said, Josh said ample opportunities to be a head coach elsewhere. I think he would have taken that by now if he was going to. I think he is pretty much anticipating stepping in for Bill when he does retire, which I think, it could be sooner rather than later. Bill seems a little bit different this year, just the way he's talking, the way he's kind of acting, doing things. I'm not saying the retirement's imminent, but, I don't see him coaching another 5 years, really. I think maybe 2 or 3. And then you start to think about the future after Bill. I think if they do go external, though, I would go for a guy that does things totally his own way. I wouldn't want to try and replicate what Bill has done. Do something new, because every time you have a guy that tries to follow the guy and do the same thing and keep it up that way. I mean, look at Patricia in Detroit, McDaniels in Denver. I mean, so many examples just from the Belichick tree alone. They try to go in there and they try to be Bill, and it does not work. So if we're gonna go external, just find a guy that's gonna go totally different, put his own mark on things. A younger, maybe offensive-minded head coach for the future with Mac Jones, and the offense. Obviously, the league is an offensive league these days. So, yeah, I think it would definitely be an offensive guy, younger offensive guy, if you go outside of the organization for the next head coach. But I think Josh looks good to be the next head coach at this point, just based on kind of some of the tea leaves, some of the moves that have happened or haven't happened. I think he's kind of expecting that move to happen, kind of waiting in the wings.
Yeah, I agree. And we do have another one here from Red Sox. So big shout out to everybody donating today's chat. It's a big support here to the channel. Genuinely, it helps out a lot. Red Sox says, for example, signing a corner, Brian Poole, for example, trading offensive linemen, depending on who's a seller, getting who, and can improve this team. So, I definitely think Belichick would want to probably look towards free agency. I'm sure he'll look around. I'm sure you'll hear rumors about, Patriots are interested in this guy, whatever. Like, I've heard them being rumors about them looking into the running back in Tampa, whose name is just escaping me right now, Ronald Jones. I've heard rumors, because there's rumors about him, being traded, which makes sense. And I've heard the Patriots being potential suitors for him. You're going to hear a lot of rumors, but I think, at this point, what guy exactly cornerback wise is going to fit for you at this point that is going to make sense for you to give up capital, but also fit into your financial standpoint. So I could definitely see them looking towards free agency. As for trading an offensive lineman, it depends on how Belichick feels. You know, New England's dealing with so many injuries already throughout the team, whether it's offensive line, whether it's offense or just defense in general. And, you know, the biggest name to me that you could talk about on the offensive line being traded would be Isaiah Wynn. Now, obviously, he has not performed great this season. They signed that 5th-year option, so they have him signed for next year also. I think they do have a guy like Justin Herron, who plays good at left tackle, plays terrible at right tackle, which is what we've been seeing from him, but he's purely a left tackle. He could come in and substitute for Wynn if that did happen, but I do still think Isaiah Wynn is the better player of the two if you're looking at Wynn and Herron. I don't think New England's ready to just give up, especially with how the offensive line has performed to give away depth and to give away a starting piece, despite how he's played. I personally, just don't see that one happening.
I mean, I think Isaiah's biggest problem, he's just too inconsistent. I mean, when he has good stretches and he has stretches where it looks like he's never played football before. I mean, I think he was a natural guard when he was at Georgia. I don't think they're going to really tamper with it too much. I'd like to kind of see how he looks at guard. I thought about maybe, trying to swap him and Owinu, because we know that Michael Owinu has, at least NFL experience at tackle, and he's played well there. Kind of had a few struggles earlier in the year at left guard. Maybe see if something even as subtle as that, just swapping sides, makes any kind of positive improvement. Hard to say. If Owinu could just work on his consistency, I don't think they'd have a problem extending him. I mean, he's naturally talented. I just think mentally sometimes he just checks out.
Yeah, no, I completely 100% agree with you. Let me make sure there's not anything else I'm quickly missing here in the chat. Looks like we do have one more here. Neil Ray, another longtime supporter, he said, why can't we tackle, get a running back, Mac or Odell and Poole? So I would say like that was probably one of my bigger takeaways from this game against the Jets was it was a good game all around. I mean, you hold them to 16 points. Was it? I believe it was 16, right?
Yesterday 13.
13 points. I don't know why I was thinking 16 for some reason. I don't know what 16 was thinking of. 13 points here. Obviously, still played a pretty good game, but there were definitely times where I'm like, "Yo, what are you doing?" I mean, Kyle Van Noy should have had that big missed tackle behind the line of scrimmage on a running play against the Jets. Totally missed it. And they had positive yardage on that play. Then there was a point where, Miles Bryant, and we'll get into some of our, overall winners and losers, a couple of those guys here in a minute, but spoiler alert, Miles Bryant, I think, played an excellent game, but there was a point where he tried to make a tackle, totally just dove for the guy's feet, totally missed, and it was a much bigger play than it should have. Missed tackles, I think, has been a problem throughout the season, and it's a reason they've been bitten the butt at times, and it definitely showed up here a little bit. I definitely do agree, but nonetheless, it wasn't a huge problem, but again, still plays you 100% got to make.
Looking at some tape on Dallas last week, that was probably my biggest takeaway defensively, was the tackling on the outside by the corners and the defensive backs in general just was not there. It was a lot of, like I said, miss, wrapping up around the ankles, and Amari Cooper breaks out of it for an extra 10 yards when it should have been like a 7-yard gain. He winds up getting 17. Things like that, little things like that. Yeah, tackling does need to be better. I would agree with the comment there. As far as getting Marlon Mack, I could see that. I think he's a good, versatile back who is looking for a fresh start somewhere else. I think that could be mutually beneficial to both sides. I don't think there's any way we're getting Odell Beckham. I don't think that's a move financially or really even from a football perspective. I'd like to see Odell Beckham get back to his pre-injury form before I even consider trading for him. I'd need Cleveland to eat a lot of that salary. I don't think that's something they'd necessarily be willing to do. I think they'd rather just ride it out with him, see if he gets back to form. And the guys like Brian Poole, the Brian Pooles of the world, I think that's going to be the caliber of player you can expect to acquire around the trade deadline. I just don't see anything really splashy coming necessarily until the offseason. Trade deadline acquisitions, it's pretty rare to see a truly premium caliber player get traded at the deadline. You just look back through history, it just doesn't happen all that often. I know we remember the one, Talib in 13, but moves like that just oftentimes aren't even there to be made. So I would expect, maybe some supplementary additions. Definitely wouldn't expect something like Odell Beckham. It would be nice to have an elite caliber receiver to add in. I mean, that's always something you would like to have, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I think Odell's a pretty big pipe dream because we've all just heard about it so many times. We're like, oh, when's it going to happen? I think Odell made sense maybe like in the offseason when you had all that money. The cap didn't necessarily seem as bad for this year. But considering you don't even have like $1 million to $2 million to your name, that contract is a big one to move. So I would agree that I don't really think Odell is this big name to watch here, at least for the Patriots. But I think at this point, like the Patriots could look at free agents and be okay. Like, don't necessarily need to give up assets. Like you said, like and I am kind of pissed off about this. Like, we have young guys that I think should be playing. Like, example, Josh Uche, Chase Winovich, like good guys that are young that we're just not playing, which is pissed me off for so long. But if you're tight against the cap, the draft is the way to look. We saw a different approach by the team this past year, which I think is nice. Obviously, Perkins is a guy that I think is in their future. They're kind of redshirting this year. But if you're tight against the cap, the draft is usually the way to look to get a high caliber-ish potential player on a low budget deal. So I think there's name free agencies that, like, free agency wise, you could look at. You want to go running back? Hammered it before. I'm going to hammer it again. Duke Johnson, I think, fits this offense. I'm going to hammer it again. Yeah. Blitz pickup.
It's a good call.
Talk about a receiving running back or a running back in general. Free agency. This guy is like no market at this point. At least put him on the practice squad. You're going to get him for such minimum, and I think that he could definitely make a pretty nice impact, especially compared to what you've been getting since the start of the season. What's the reason? What's the reasoning behind it that you have not done it yet? I don't know. I don't necessarily think you need to go and get a big name like who are we talking about? Like a Marlon Mack or a Ronald Jones or something. Great names, and I'm not opposed to it. But there's still guys out there that I think can make the same impact without, not necessarily the same, but it's still a good impact without having to, give anything up.
That's I think people always jump for the name value. That's the natural thing to do. But I mean, oftentimes you might have a guy who's not really doing much with their current team, but they're traded to a different situation, different system, and all of a sudden they become a different kind of player. Duke Johnson, I think that would be athlete, fast, can catch the ball out of the backfield. You can't sit there and tell me that Brandon Bolden would be a better option than Duke Johnson. He just wouldn't. I'm glad that Bolden had a nice game yesterday. I've been pretty critical of him of late. I saw all the people who say, "Oh, see, told you so." Bolden's good. Bolden's good. Well, okay, he had a nice game yesterday. I hope it continues. Like, don't get me wrong. I hope I stay wrong about him. I hope he continues to put up touchdowns and big gains on the ground. I don't really see that happening, but I think third down back, it's going to be a huge hole trying to replace James White. I don't think they're going to necessarily even be able to replace James White, but if they can bring somebody in to at least shorten some of that workload, at least make that sting a little less, I think you definitely go ahead and do that. And I think Duke Johnson would be a great guy. I think that's a great name to throw in there as far as that third down back role.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. And to kind of touch upon the Brandon Bolden here for a second, I mean, he had a great game, and I'm not taking anything away from that. I'm okay with seeing him in situational packages. I'm not okay with seeing him as the lead running back for sure.
I don't want to rely on him.
Yeah, I don't want to rely. I don't want to see him as the lead back, but I've always said I'm okay with seeing him, maybe like goal line back, seeing him in certain packages. I'm so okay with that. Like, I think Brandon Bolden has been underutilized in most of his career in New England, but as your starting running back, I don't think that he should be getting the most snaps here. But he had a good game receiving wise, led this entire team in receiving yards, which if I told you Brandon Bolden would lead this team in receiving yards, would you have believed me? Probably not.
If you told me that, I would say we got shut out.
Oh, I would have said the same thing. I mean, you put up 54 points and Brandon Bolden's your leading receiver. I would have told you don't watch football. But 7 targets, 6 receptions, 1 touchdown, 79 yards. Spectacular game by Bolden. Yeah. I think he showed some potential for sure and why he should be in certain packages. But I think this isn't something you're going to see from Brandon Bolden week in and week out. You're not going to get a James White-esque player here from Brandon Bolden. You're not going to see him put up another 60, 70 yards the next week and the week out. It's not going to happen. I think a lot of this was the offense knowing how to call plays but more specifically, I think the Jets blew coverage at times, and Bolden was able to definitely take advantage of it from a veteran aspect. This isn't something you're going to see every week. It's not.
Yeah, that's found money. You can't really rely on that. It's kind of like a Jonas Gray type of situation. He'll pop off for one game, but then kind of falls into the ether again after that. I mean, not that it'll be necessarily that drastic, but I definitely wouldn't expect Brandon Bolden ripping off 30-yard gains after the catch on screen passes, being the leading receiver. That's not something that I would consistently expect to happen. I still definitely think, regardless of his performance, which was good, I give him credit. He played a great game yesterday. I still think we'd be well served to bring in another third down style of back. And something else I've been thinking about lately, I don't know if I got a chance to ask you about this. I've been wanting to use Jonnu Smith kind of as a third down back, not necessarily running him.
I agree.
But just using him out of the backfield, motion him around, move him around, create some matchups, screen game, get the ball in his hand with some blockers in front of him. I think that's his best quality, and that's mainly what attracted the Patriots to him in the offseason. The work he can do with the ball after the catch in the open field. I just don't think they've really gotten him enough opportunities like that. They did yesterday early in the game. They got a quick little tight end screen out there to the left side, made a big gain off of it, and they got him a few targets early. And I know they got a lot of guys involved yesterday, and that was the plan. I think like 11 different Patriots players caught pass yesterday. But, just to see, him and Hunter, those should be the focal points of the offense, at least, the majority of the time. Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, obviously Jacoby Myers, they've been good. But I think you want to be able to hang your hat on those two tight ends, the 12 personnel, the play action out of that. I think that's when you're going to be at your most effective. But it was good to see them trying to get Jonnu Smith involved a little more, in a unique fashion, kind of as a Swiss Army knife type of thing, not necessarily your traditional inline tight end. I think we talked about that last time too. I think Hunter is probably, definitely the more refined route runner at the position, but John is just a great athlete. Just get him the ball out in the open field with a couple blockers in front of him, let him do his thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I've actually talked about that in the past before when New England was really hammering with all of these running back issues, whether it was pass protection, whether it was fumbling. I was like, you know what? We're talking about additions and this guy's inactive. And it's like, well, dear God, now James White is out and Damian Harris is fumbling the ball and J.J. Taylor's fumbling the ball and Ramondre Stevenson's fumbling the ball. And
can't bench everybody.
Yeah, you can't rely on anyone. I'm like, you have Jonnu Smith here. You know what I'm saying? Like, is it something casually that you do? No, but I mean, we saw it in a game a few years ago. Cordero Patterson was in that running back for the Patriots, and it worked out. I mean, you work with what you got. He really is for lack of better words, and I don't love using this word, but he's a Swiss Army knife, really. Like, he's so versatile. You can use him in a multitude of different ways. He's been a pretty damn good run blocker for this team. Like, if you're struggling with that, you're struggling in pass protection, use Jonnu in at H-back, use him as a running back from time to time. It's not something we're really seeing. He's gotten it from time to time in the past with the Titans, and I would have expected to see it a little bit more here with the Patriots just because of how, creative Josh McDaniels likes to be and finally has players to be able to do that with. I would not mind seeing him from time to time get, the ball from a running place. It's something I want to see consistently. No,
you don't even have to use them like between the tackles.
No, just as like a pass protection. Yeah,
get them lined up in the backfield. Create those matchups. Create creative matchups on the linebackers. Linebackers are generally going to be too slow to try and cover him out of the backfield. And the screen game, I don't see how it wouldn't at least be a good idea to try and get, John, some of the looks that Bolden has been less effective with. Again, yesterday aside. Get him some of those, third and, 7 to 8 to 10, third and long screen plays, see what he can do out in the open field. I think he's our best athlete on offense. Get him the ball and let him do what he does best.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, if you're really struggling with these guys and not being able to pick up pass protection, it's a different alignment for Jonnu. So I think it is something like you don't want to just throw in there randomly. You do want to have him practice it a little bit there in practice, but it's nothing too complicated. And if you're really struggling, throw him in there. And I think it's a good way to go. And I think they were using Jonnu a lot in the beginning of this game. I mean, they were really trying to get Jonnu going. Jonnu was going, and then obviously dealt with that injury, which, we'll talk about injuries here in just a second, because I think that was a big takeaway of this game. But we do have another donation here, and it's a really good question too. So I do want to talk about it. Kincaid with another donation. Big shout out to you. You said, why not give Johnson a chance at the third down back? And this is something I've actually asked myself, because if you remember a couple of years ago, James Devlin, when New England would get to New England would get to the goal line, a lot of the times what they would do is they would go with James Devlin. They would punch the ball in. Now, of course, you have your Sony Michels, you have your Brandon Boldens, your Rex Burkheads, all these other guys, your James Whites to be able to run that ball in. But a lot of times they use that fullback. They line up. They go under center, Tom Brady. Then you have behind him James Devlin and then Sony Michel. And they would think, hey, you're going to hand it off to Sony Michel with James Devlin blocking in front. But no, they would give it off to James Devlin and just pound that ball in. Yeah. I've asked myself, why don't you do that with Jakob Johnson at times? You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's something that really piqued my mind yesterday again when it was late in the game. You go JJ Taylor. JJ Taylor isn't able to punch the ball in. I think it's third down, and I'm like, you line up exactly the same when I'm like, give it to Jakob. I mean, to stop Jakob, 6'3", 250 some pounds. That is not an easy man to stop. Have him just bull rush the heck out of that goal line. You're at the 1 yard line. He's 100% going to make it. Why would you not trust him?
Yeah.
I would not mind seeing that from time to time. Now they did go back to JJ Taylor. JJ Taylor did get it. But I think that's something you do kind of have to ask yourself. Why not go with Jakob Johnson at those goal line? At goal line sometimes when it's something you did with James Devlin before. So I wouldn't mind seeing that. I think it's something they should definitely look into.
That just reminded me of something really funny during the broadcast yesterday. James Lofton, the color commentator for CBS, he's been pretty sketchy on some of his calls, and he called the Houston game. And he kept calling Josh McDaniel and stuff like that. He's just been kind of throwing out some off the wall kind of comments. I do agree. Jakob Johnson is a short yardage back. That would definitely be something worth trying and something that would, in all likelihood, be effective. He's a big, he's a rock, man. Why not run him downhill between the tackles? But James Lofton went as far as to compare Jakob Johnson to Derrick Henry. I don't know if you heard that. He was like, "Oh, he reminds me a lot of Derrick Henry." I mean, just with his size and speed and physicality. I was like, "Man, are you kidding right now?" I mean, Derrick Henry. I agree. He could be useful in that short yardage situation, but that just blew me away that he compared him to Derrick Henry. And he caught 2 passes yesterday. Did Jakob Johnson? So he's on his way to catching Jerry Rice now. 11 career receptions. But yeah, no, seriously, I do agree. Use him in that short yardage situation. I think that would be definitely something. He would be the biggest and strongest back they would have while retaining still some level of athleticism. Damian Harris, he runs hard, but Jakob's obviously just bigger and bulkier. He looks more like a big defensive end more than anything else. I think they should give it a shot. I think they'd be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, you can at least try it out. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen, So, and King Cato with another donation even said it. I mean, Jakob Johnson can also catch. Look at what he did yesterday. I mean, it's not a situation of where you want him to constantly be catching passes, or you don't want to line him up at receiver, or you don't want to line him up at tight end. But if you want to set him out wide and create a little bit of a mismatch, and he's wide open. I mean, he's not fast. He's not fast, but he can catch, and he's not an easy guy to go down. Not at all. And like you said, he compared him to Derrick Henry. I understand maybe the size, but I mean, from a talent standpoint and a usage standpoint, I don't know where he got that from. But in perspective on what he said about Derrick Henry, he did say something that was right. I mean, you try to tackle Derrick Henry up high, he's just going to shake you off. And that's exactly
size-wise, I thought it's a fair comparison. Everything else after that's kind of laughable. But yeah, I mean, short yardage situations here and there. Yeah, hell, why not? I mean, give it to him. He's a bull. Let him run downhill. Power football, old school, I formation type of football. Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, he showed it. He was a defender tried to tackle him from the jet, tried to tackle him up high and just shook him right off, kept going. And then the other defender just slid at his feet, and that's how you got him down. But, before we get into kind of the injury aspect of this, and then we talk about some of our winners before we end this one off, I do want to give a shout out to the sponsors of this video and the sponsors of this channel, betonline.ag. You guys already know them, big sponsors of this channel. So go to all them for all of your betting needs 100%, whether it's from sports, whether it's from, regular casino games. I highly recommend you guys check them out. They are back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron teams as they're back to start again another football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all pro and college football action for this football season. They have a new updated site and interface, and with even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline continues to be the number one source for everything football. All you guys have to do Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive a 100% welcome bonus, guys. That is double your initial deposit just for signing up. Don't forget to use that promo code NFL100. Again, NFL100. From football, basketball, boxing, Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all of the great available offers for the 2021 season. Bet online, the fastest ways to bet on all of your favorite sports, and Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. But like we mentioned several times in this, and I think we finally have to touch upon it, injuries. New England has been totally railed with injuries this entire season. I mean, 2 pages worth, it seems, every week compared to other teams, which is maybe half a page when it comes to injuries. But you want to talk about the Jets game alone. I mean, you had Shaq Mason go out, you had Devin McCourty go out, you had Carl Davis go out. I'm trying to think if I missed anyone.
Harvey Lange hurt his knee probably a few weeks.
Harvey did go out also. So Harvey Lange, they said, is an MCL sprain. His timeline, they're not 100% sure when he's going to come back. And I think this is a bigger loss than some people realize. It's because Dante Hightower not playing in this game due to injury. He actually started at middle linebacker, and he was actually the Patriots' only middle linebacker. Every other linebacker that played this game for the team actually played at outside. So also his contribution on special teams, it's a pretty big loss, and hopefully he's able to get back within a couple of weeks. He should be able to return this season. MCL sprains aren't anything crazy. It's not like it was torn. I think he could be placed on injured reserve for sure just to save a roster spot, but I definitely think he should be able to return, at some point this season.
Yeah, they've been snake bitten pretty badly by injuries. I mean, it's something every team goes through, obviously, but I think it was like 14-something guys this past week listed as questionable going into the game. And it was kind of the second week in a row, too, that they had a player sit down or inactive at a position. Then they compound that by, having somebody go down during the game. Like last week, Joan Williams was a healthy scratch. And then Jonathan Jones goes down during the game. So it's like a double whammy. Harvey Lange playing for Dante Hightower, who was out recovering from an injury. He gets hurt. So it's like, these double down kind of injuries really attacking the Patriots' depth. Hopefully it's nothing serious like, Jonnu Smith, Jack Mason. He already had that abdominal injury. Maybe they were just getting him some rest, hopefully, because of the score. Devin, I think he got like the wind knocked out of him. He was trying to make that interception.
Yeah, it was an ab injury.
That was the play where Duggar got the PI. But hopefully that's not too bad. Yeah, they can't afford to lose too many more of their frontline guys. Pretty banged up right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Hopefully that bye week cannot come soon enough. I think that's probably my biggest takeaway from this is that bye week needs to come along because,
late bye this year. I think it's like week 14.
Yeah. It's after. We still have like 7 weeks, I think, until that bye week. So we have a long time ahead. But I mean, even with that being said, that long till the bye week, how many more injuries are we going to get? I mean, that bye week cannot come soon enough. But finish this off. Who is in a positive sense, we'll do positive and negative. Who is from a positive perspective, player of the game?
Ooh, player of the game. I would say, this might be cliche, but I would say Mac Jones, probably first career 300-yard passing game. I thought he delivered the ball, accurately and on time all day. I thought he hit that pass down the sideline to Kendrick Bourne later. That was beautiful. He got off to a little bit of a shaky start, but I think he settled in real nice. He missed a couple of receivers early, but overall on the day, he was totally in command. Played really well, delivered the ball. I think it was like 10 out of 11 on short to intermediate throws. Like they showed a spray chart. He was like 10 out of 11 on throws like inside of 12 or 13 yards. So I hope we have a pea shooter for a lot of years to come if that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, 2 touchdowns. He threw 36 passes, completed 24 of them. It's spectacular game, I think, for Mac Jones. So I mean, and he even showed the wheels on him. So he showed us, I mean, everything I think you could possibly ask for. So I think that was a good one. My player of the game. Some people might be a little bit shocked here, but I'm putting this into perspective. Miles Bryant. This was Miles Bryant's first game, like active starter. Yeah, he's been promoted a couple times, but finally was promoted to the 53-man roster. Plays about 80-some% of the defensive snaps. Comes in. He had that one missed tackle, but I thought he performed really, really great. And I'll be curious to see the advanced statistics on him. But he recorded a forced fumble. He recorded a sack. I mean, he was coming in, being the starter first time in his career, and he's already out here making plays. So I thought, for me, from him coming in just 1 week and making those plays, I mean, I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, he had a great day. He had a great day. Very active, like you said. And starting. We're going to be relying on him a lot more now with Jonathan Jones gone for the season. So it's going to be important for him to continue to step up. He even saw some time at safety after Devin got hurt. So yeah, that's a good call. Miles Bryant had a really nice game yesterday.
Yeah, and this is going to be a little bit tough because, I mean, 54-13. There's not a lot of guys that you're gonna be like, oh, that was horrendous. But if you had a player, and you can be like, I honestly can't think of one, because I'm having trouble thinking of one. But who would you say would be your player that you go had a tough game? This was my player who I vocally saw had a pretty tough game. I would,
and again, like you said, it's kind of with a caveat. It's not like it was terrible, egregious, bad. I don't think anybody really had a horrible game yesterday. If I had to pick somebody out, I would probably go with Jalen Mills. I think he struggled a little bit in coverage. He's been a little iffy last couple of weeks. I think that kind of continued yesterday. Just think he was out of position on some plays and missed a couple tackles on the outside. Thought Jalen Mills probably could have played a little bit better. I think he's probably going to be disappointed with that performance when he looks at it on tape. But yeah, if I had to pick a down performance for somebody yesterday, I'd probably go with Jalen Mills.
And we actually did just get the advanced statistics. So let me see exactly. So for the defensive backs, Jalen Mills did have one missed tackle. I do remember that. It really seemed like the Jets were targeting those Patriots outside cornerbacks there on just those short to intermediate passes. Jalen Mills, though, targeted 7 times, allowed 5 receptions for 41 yards, 1 touchdown, and allowed a passer rating of 125.6.
Wow.
Miles Bryant was targeted twice, allowed 2 receptions for 19 yards, and allowed a 106 passer rating. But I mean, only targeted twice. I mean, for your first starting game, it's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Honestly, I cannot think of me specifically one loser. I mean, I don't have a specific player I would say would be a loser, but I would say adapting to their backup quarterback for the Jets, that is, when Zach Wilson went out. Adapting to him at first, I thought was horrendous by the defense, by the defensive calling was not good. I thought he came out. I mean, it was right after halftime they came out and on their first drive scored a touchdown, I believe.
Yeah.
And it was pretty quick too. So I would say adjusting at first was not smart. It seems like they really kind of set everyone back into the secondary and not so much coming to blitz him. So I think they kind of thought, oh, backup quarterback, now's our chance to take advantage, and it didn't really work out. They kind of realized when they should adjust, and they did adjust, and they were perfectly fine. But I would say at first sight, adjusting to that backup quarterback was not pretty at first to start. But nonetheless, they adjusted and they were fine.
Yeah, I think Mike White, he played, I think admirably considering the situation. That was his first NFL action of any kind, and coming into not really a good situation to begin with. I thought, yeah, like you said, when he first came out, he was pretty effective. I think, later in the game, they kind of gave him a lot of the underneath stuff where he kind of chewed up a lot of the yardage and a lot of the clock. But yeah, something to work on going into next week, no doubt.
Yeah, well, guys, we went for about an hour and 18 minutes. We did definitely a long one here today, but Patriots Football Breakdown, like always, make sure you guys do subscribe to him. Make sure you guys do subscribe to my channel. We do a lot of crossover stuff. We will be doing probably a co-collaboration channel here, NFL Global, for those of you longtime supporters that remember, for everything football that's not the New England Patriots, because we have these channels, obviously, but all other 31 NFL teams will be co-collabing on that channel. So if you guys want to do subscribe to that, we will be bringing that back soon. But he will be back here once to twice every single week, guys, every Monday at 5 p.m. to recap the New England Patriots matchup. So we appreciate you guys for watching this one. And like always, we will catch you guys very soon. Subscribe to the channels, like the video, share it with some friends. But like always, go Pats.